The markets are pumping, Bitcoin is nicely consolidating at 95k and altcoins are starting to wake up. And yet, the bear market PTSD kicks in as people are expecting a crash to happen. That's why it's time to have a normal and calm update about what the markets are going to do. Let's get started. Hello, we have partnered with OKX, and if you sign up before December the 5th, you're going to get two important things, which is the lowest trading fees. Right now we have the bull market and I want to trade as much as I can. So I'm very happy with the lowest fees that I can get on OKX. And if you sign up, you can earn up to 270 euros in free money if you hold a certain amount of cash on the exchange. The link you can find beneath here. Make sure to sign up and have a wonderful time on OKX. Before we get started with this update on the markets, we've just seen the OKX Promo, and as you can see behind me, we are partnered with OKX as it's the best exchange that I think people should be using when they want to use a DEX or a centralized exchange. The good part is Belgium is now also added. So if you're a client or a trader from Belgium, make sure to use the code and get up to 270 euros in free money. And then on top of that, it's the final week to do so. So if you want to grab additional money, which can be a 10x at the end of the cycle, do it before December the 5th. Now, it's also Black Friday weekend and Cyber Monday, which means that there are a lot of things taking place. And as you know, I'm making content on this YouTube channel twice a week. There's a lot of preparation, a lot of time going into this channel, also in our podcast channel. So I can't do more, but I have been making more than 15 hours of educational content in the past year, which prepares you for the bull market and which gives you a trading knowledge and guideline on how to execute well during the bull market through our Crypto 101 and Trading 101 course. That's why, and we don't do this quite often, it's actually the first time this year that we're doing a discount. We are going to give you a discount to prepare yourself through those courses. The only thing you need to do is to sign up through the link beneath and leave your email there, and then you will get a nice discount on Cyber Monday from me for yourself on the course. Now, time to discuss the update, which is the market sentiment is going through the roof at this point. And it's giving quite a weird vibe where either some people are expecting a crash to happen and the other people are expecting the markets to continue moving. And the first group is still stuck in the bear market PTSD, which also says that the expectations of this cycle to go higher is still not there. I mean, there's still actual FOMO and euphoric state to be happening unless you are into meme coins. Now, to discuss where we are with the momentum, we've got a very nice indicator which is called the Altcoin Season Index, which is a number between 0 to 100, and everything beneath 30 is technically a negative number, or then it's not altcoin season. And everything above like 75 is altcoin season, and technically if it goes above 50, you can already say it's altcoin season. Now the number is 63, so that technically says that we are in the period where altcoins are going to outperform. If you go back to the previous period of last quarter 2023 and the first quarter of 2024, then you saw that during November and December, we were actually already breaking through the numbers of 50, and from there on we stayed there. So having the altcoin season indicator being so positive doesn't say that it's going to end soon. It can just stay there for 4 to 5 months in which you can yield yourself the returns. But as long as it stays there, at some point you need to start taking profit. So it's actually a very positive indicator that we're seeing this momentum in the altcoins. And honestly, it's the first time in 8 months that we're breaking above that number. Or breaking above 50, so it's a super positive sign. The other sign that we see in the markets is the rotation. And the rotation, I mean the rotation from Solana to ETH. Solana is doing great, but if we look at the chart Solana divided by ETH, we can actually see that ETH is starting to pace up. So it might make sense that we are going to rotate from everything in the Solana ecosystem towards the ETH ecosystem, that here is the actual ROI to be made. But that's a bold statement, because probably a lot of you are into Solana at this point and are probably going to say, yes, but Solana goes higher. Perhaps. But I think the ecosystem, so coins within there, in Ether are heavily undervalued, and the coins in Solana are relatively normal or high overvalued at this point, which means that you can make a higher ROI going into the ETH ecosystem. And then we can also see that we are having a case of ETH showing strength because of the yields going down. The yields have started to fall in the past week. And if we look at the 10-year yield, we can actually see that we are having a downwards trend. So again, a lower high was created. Likely we're going to have a lower low, and likely we're continuing to have rate cuts and lower yields, because that's the only way that the US can get out of this debt spiral that they are stuck in. But there's a very strong correlation between ETH and the yields, and ETH and the dollar. Because on top of that, in the previous week, we've seen a substantial correction taking place on the strength of the dollar. So the yields dropped, the dollar dropped, ETH goes up. And that's actually a good pendulum to be in. That's actually fueling the current momentum with the markets. And that's a good sign, through which we can also see that the Ethereum ETF inflow has been super positive. But I'll get to that in a little bit. Now, if we discuss all these things, what are the key events that are coming up? And we had some corrections taking place on Thursday and Wednesday, and also a little bit on Friday. The reason for that correction is that we had options expiry, and we are having the end of the month taking place, and we have labor market week approaching. So the past week, we've not have seen any momentum in the macroeconomics, but next week is going to be the final sort of big one for this year, which is on Tuesday, we're going to have the job opening data. And if you recall from the previous month, we had a very, very big miss on the job opening data. So less jobs were created. And if that downwards fall continues to happen, it's the second indicator or the second variable for the Fed to start changing their thesis or their policy when it comes to the interest rate. So if the labor markets get weaker, it's very likely we are facing a recession. And if that is the case, they need to do some more rate cuts and the dollar becomes weaker. And then, yes, everything in crypto goes up. So the question for that one is the downtrend going to continue? Then on Wednesday, we've got the Fed Chairman Powell speaking. We're probably looking for what he's going to say if we look into the future. What is the Fed going to do in terms of rate cuts? We've got ISM Services PMI happening, which remain to be positive. And what I say by positive, if it stays above 50, then the economy is still growing and positive. But if it drops below 50, it's contracting, and then we are in a technical potential recession to be happening in the future. The recent data show that it's at 55. So if that continues to drop or starts to drop, it's another signal for the Fed to start doing more rate cuts. And then on Wednesday and Friday, we've got ADP non-farm employment change. It was positive last month on Wednesday, but on Friday there was a big miss. And the unemployment rate, which had a slight increase in the last month. If that continues to happen, then it's on top of the job openings and all the other economic data. Super important to watch for what the yields are going to do, and then thus what Ethereum is going to do. And from that perspective, I think that we're actually facing a very positive period for crypto. It's a big week, and yet people are having different expectations, which is completely fine. But as it is social media, you can see that there are some massive, strange expectations just to lure you into content creation, to make sure that you get into any affiliate link or into anything that they are saying. I've got a thumbnail here, which is from someone on YouTube that says, Bitcoin last warning. There are also other ones saying that there's a big correction or big crash going to happen. It's just not. those massive corrections of Bitcoin going to 70K are very unusual to happen in a bull market. They happen when the markets have been going up massively. And then, yes, 20 to 30% corrections do happen, but not when it just got out of the market's consolidation. We've just had a 7-month consolidative period where likely we are not going to be back into those regions. But yes, we will be having corrections at some point, but we just started with the upward trends for altcoins. So let's have a normal look at the charts and see what the crucial levels are, which you need to look out to and which you need to use to define yourself a proper strategy. Let's discuss the charts in which we can see a lot of important data that we want to use when we want to define whether Bitcoin is expensive, whether the altcoins are expensive. And I can understand that if Bitcoin reaches 100K, and if you go back in time, Bitcoin used to be below $1,000 7 years ago, you could technically say that Bitcoin is expensive, but what is expensive and what does it mean? So then you start looking at certain indicators to see where we are heading. And one of them is the difference that we see in this cycle compared to the previous cycle is that in this cycle, a lot of Bitcoin are being withdrawn from the exchanges into hard wallets. And if those are going to be back into the exchanges, then you can technically say, hey, the whales are selling. At this point, there's no real indication that the whales are selling at this stage. Actually, they keep on buying. So the chart that you can see next to me is that the price of Bitcoin rallies, but the amount of Bitcoin on the exchanges and the exchange reserves are dropping and falling off a cliff, which shows that there is still a certain supply shock taking place. And if you look at the Bitcoin ETF flow, we can also see that on a consistent basis, and yes, intraday or day-to-day, we can have a negative day. But if we look at the previous month, there has been a massive inflow in Bitcoin through the ETF. And that inflow, and you can actually add the buys of MicroStrategy to that as well. But that inflow is significantly larger than the amount of Bitcoin being mined on a daily basis. So there is already like a supply and demand shock taking place. And then when you start to look at what a valuation is, then people are saying that Bitcoin is overvalued at this point. But if you look at the most of the altcoins compared to Bitcoin, and I've been saying, or I've been discussing this topic in the previous update on Thursday, many of them compared to Bitcoin are at cycle lows. And they are just literally reversing at this stage. Against the US dollar, they are somewhat rallying already or breaking out of the accumulation range. An example is Chainlink, which used to be way higher in 2021. And yes, during that period, the FOMO and the enthusiasm was super high. The valuation peaked in 2020, but now Chainlink is at a cycle cycle low, and the US dollar valuation is still down 70 to 80%. But now people are not interested into it while you actually should. And that's just a reference for many of the altcoins that are heavily undervalued and are not expensive at this point. Now, when we're looking at the charts, there are a few important charts that we need to be looking at. And the first one is the fact that the yields have started to fall. And if you compare the yield price action to what Ethereum is doing, then the correlation is almost 1. So if the yields continue to fall off a cliff, or at least trend downwards, that is going to be a signal where Ethereum starts to continue having momentum, where likely we're going to see continued strength in the altcoins too, and likely continuation of momentum in DeFi. And if, as you can see, if the dollar continues to show its impact, and from a technical standpoint, we've got all these highs here, which were taken here, and then a reversal took place. I think that the dollar is also slightly peaking it at this point, as Donald Trump has stated that he wants to weaken the dollar technically to just get out of the debt spiral that they are in, or at least to be paying back the debt that they have through increasing the inflation and to weakening the dollar. If these two are continuing their downwards fall, that is going to be substantial for ETH. Now, as I said, people are saying Bitcoin is going to have a massive crash. And yes, you can see that Bitcoin has been going vertical in the previous period. And there are some sweet spots that you should be looking at. And those sweet spots are liquidity driven. So we had a small correction taking place from Bitcoin from 99K to 91K. And we bounced from this crucial area of support. During that correction, it wasn't really a flash crash because there was no panic. When there is panic, altcoins are dropping and falling off a cliff, which didn't happen. So we're just continuing the momentum. And it's very normal that if you go back in time and you look at the period of December, we had a vertical move, a flash crash, and consolidation for 3 months for Bitcoin before it started to take off again. Prior to the ETF, that in this case, we're going to copy paste that for a little bit. So what are the crucial levels that you should be looking at when it comes to Bitcoin? Those are the following. So if we have the level at 91K here, if Bitcoin loses that, we're taking the liquidity beneath these lows. So it's very likely to expect that we get beneath 85K. So anywhere between, let's say, 81 to 84K is an optimal entry. If Bitcoin loses that low, because then it starts to cascade a little bit more. On the other hand, if Bitcoin breaks through 98K, as it is stuck in this pendulum, if it breaks through there, we're going to make a new high. How high we go? I don't know, but at least we're going to take the liquidity, test 100K again, likely go up a little bit more, and then rotate. So that is where we are at this point. I don't believe that we're going to have a retest of 70K taking place. If it happens, then the thesis of having a longer cycle is definitely strengthening. But it's very normal to have those like 20% corrections at some time. I don't know if it's going to happen in the next week. Maybe Bitcoin goes up first and then has that correction. But these are the crucial levels to watch. So if Bitcoin loses that 91K level, that's when you want to have those dip buying opportunities taking place. And that's also the period where altcoins can have a substantial correction. Until then, nothing really happens in terms of price action. Now, the other important one is ETH against Bitcoin, which finally flipped a level, has a massive bullish divergence. And given that we are trend reversing here, including the volume that we have, it is signaling that we're going to have an upwards trend taking place, that I think we're going to test 0.04 or maybe even 0.045 in the coming 1 to 2 months, which also signals that Bitcoin is going to remain flat. And during that period, I think altcoins will do more than ETH is doing. So if we are expecting ETH to test 0.045, that's a run of 15%. So you could expect that many altcoins are going to do anywhere between 40 to 100% against Bitcoin, independent of what Bitcoin is going to do against the US dollar. Then the most important chart is the total tree, which is the altcoin market cap divided by Bitcoin. The last time we had a bullish divergence signaled the low in September of 2019. Right now, we have one massive bullish divergence, and it signals that we are reversing with the altcoin markets into a bull cycle, which indicates that finally, way later than in the previous cycle, we are in a bull market and it's just barely reversing. So that means that you should be aware of the fact that there's more upside to be made when it comes to the altcoins. And the final chart is the total market cap broke through the most important level, which is around the all-time high. It is in an uptrend. So any dips we are going to get are dips that you want to use. There's no confirmation of a bear market at this stage at all. I think most of the altcoins are going to rally, but they will be volatile. And Bitcoin is just nicely consolidating at this point. So that's how I look at the charts. If Bitcoin loses 91K, that is one crucial indication that we are likely going to have a wick down and then we continue to move up. But that's about it when it comes to the charts. I've discussed this during the charts and in the previous subjects already, but my strategy is relatively the same, which means that going forward, yes, altcoins are going to have that correction of like 20 to 40%. But if I look at most of my altcoins, they barely broke out of that accumulation range. For example, Chainlink, which is not in my portfolio, it just broke out of that 6 months accumulation period. Optimism just broke out of it. Wormhole and some other smaller ones didn't even break out of it yet. So for me, if I am going to speculate on the markets at this point, there's no upside. The risk of missing the move is significant, and we know from XRP and XLM that once that move takes place, it goes bananas. So you rather want to be patient and find something to kill the time during your positioning in the markets than that you're going to speculate to have a tiny profit on buying back lower. So if you are into altcoins at this point and they didn't move yet, just be calm. If you're looking to get into the markets when it comes to Bitcoin and ETH, I think just do the DCA strategy or wait for those obvious corrections to happen, of which we don't know yet when they are going to come. But all in all, social media is cranking up already. And I think that's the period where you need to stay calm. And that's what we are trying to achieve during these updates. Thank you very much for watching to this update. Next week, we'll be back with 2 new fresh ones. So make sure to subscribe to this YouTube channel. Which altcoin would you like me to discuss? Make sure to comment it beneath as well. And I'll see you again on Thursday. Ciao.